being wise, Gary's here today. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Chair. It's just to confirm that following Graham's appointment as Chief Executive, he will be supporting the Performance Scrutiny Committee from now on. So in terms of a CET officer to support this committee, it's been agreed that myself and Steve Gadd will alternate. So I'm doing today and Steve will be at your next meeting.
Thank you, Gary. Apologies off anybody, Rhiannon?
No, none at all.
No, members, any apologies? No apologies. There are a few people missing, are there? So we'll carry on. Declarations of interest, anybody? No declarations of interest. Urgent matters agreed by the chair and agenda item number 3. There's nothing been agreed here. No. Minutes of the previous meeting, agenda item number 4, from 7 to 14. Anybody like to raise any issues within that?
No, Chair. Mervyn Parry.
Councillor Mervyn Parry, yes.
Are we taking questions about the minutes now, or just whether
Yes,
they're correct
please,
or not?
Yes, minutes arising, yeah.
Yeah. On page 12 and 13 of the minutes, from the last scrutiny, we've got a make sure I'm right, so I get the right thing right.
I'm struggling to hear you. Can you? I don't know your volume.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me here now?
Yeah.
It's just with when we had the wildflower areas last time from the in scrutiny last time. You know, we've got the conclusions or the resolved subject of what we discussed. What's going to happen to those decisions now? Where do they go? You know, as far as, you know, confirming that they discuss that what's happening with the town community councils and the local members, discussing it with the AONB and trunk road agencies, and discuss it, you know, we put the thing in about making sure that ragwort and docks and thistles are controlled. So what happens to this paper now? Does it, you know, just wondering where we go from here. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, if you look on page 115 of your pack, which is appendix 4 to the work programme report, that document, which you have every time, outlines the progress made with the resolutions you passed last time. Now, you'll see from there that a further progress report, as per your request, has been scheduled into the work programme for September next year. Now, if you just want a quick update on, you know, how they've progressed so far, I can ask the officers to do me a written report in time for your next meeting, if that helps.
Sorry, Rhiannon, can you just remind me of the page that's on? 115, did you say?
115, yes.
I'm just wondering what dates that comes back. Just remind me what dates that comes back on there to
September 2022.
Okay, so by then we've got a new council, so we will have, maybe none of us will be there. So I think we need an update on this while we're still in this council before we lose it going into the next council, because none of us might be here for next council, so they'll be wondering what's going on. So I think it's important that we get the answer to that before we finish, or I'd like to hear the answer of that before I finish.
Could I just come in? Could we maybe have just a monthly update off Tony on how progress is going with other services within the council as well, if that's possible? Do you mind writing to Tony to ask him that? I think Tony's in yet. I know he's been off.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Mervyn, happy with that? Any other matters arising from the previous minutes? No. Could I have a proposer and seconder what they're correct?
I propose, Peter.
I'll second, Mervyn.
Okay, you got that? Yeah, everybody got that? Yeah, thank you. Great. Right, swiftly moving on to agenda item number 5. And I think Tony Ward has joined us. So could I welcome Brian Jones, lead member, and Tony Ward, head of highways. And I think we've got Keith from NRW with us as well. Welcome everybody, welcome Keith. I know Wayne Hope's there as well to answer any technical questions as we go along. So Brian, would you like to kick off, please?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just a quick apology. As ever, I haven't got my camera on. It's not bad manners, and the connection seems pretty bad here this morning, but hopefully I'm coming through all right at the moment. Yeah?
Yeah.
Good. So quickly moving on then. So this report this morning is in connection with the 20th of January 21 flood event. It's a Section 19 flood investigation report. Further to the Storm Christoph, which unfortunately affected the region pretty badly, and it includes obviously the input from Natural Resources Wales and Do Cymru Welsh Water. Chair, you've already said who's with us this morning. Very briefly, Tony Ward, Head of Service, Wayne Hope, Denbighshire County Council, and Keith Ivan from Natural Resources Wales. If I could invite Tony Ward then to just add on to this brief introduction that I've just given. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Good morning, everybody. Just, I think I'm going to do the same. I'm going to turn my camera off. It doesn't seem to be working very well. Apologies for that. I hope you can hear me okay, though. Yeah, as Brian said, this is the Section 19 flood investigation report into the flooding event that occurred in January this year. As it says in the report, 4.3 of the cover report, the purpose of the report is essentially to address 3 questions. So why did the flooding happen? How likely is it that that scale of flooding could happen again? And what improvement actions are needed to ensure that flood risk in the county is appropriately managed in future? So what the Section 19 flood investigation report tries to do is answer those 3 questions in relation to all of the areas that experienced flooding in January 21. So you can see from page, oh sorry, my page has just moved. Page 20 of the pack today, which has got the contents page for the Section 19 report, you will see all the areas listed there where flooding occurred. So there are, as Brian said, a number of locations there. So the report looks at each of those locations in terms of those 3 questions that I highlighted earlier on. So there's quite a lot of information here. There are a number of recommendations, and there is a summary of the recommendations within the pack as well to make it easy to see them in one place. And that starts, so that's on page 36 of the pack. So instead really of going through all of that and sort of reading through it all, I would say that the best thing to do is probably open it up to members for debate and discussion and questions. And as I say, myself, Wayne, and our colleagues from NRW will help to answer those questions as best we can. So I'll leave it at there, Chair. That's okay.
Thank you, Tony. And it's so good to see you here today, Tony. And I'm sure we all wish you a speedy recovery as well. But thanks for coming to the meeting today. Keith, would you like to add to anything to that, or do you want us to go into questions? We have got a question which Graham Timms will read out later after all of the questions by members have been asked from a member of public from Ruthin. I think it's important what we engage with, what people ask these questions. So that will be coming at the end of the discussion. So Keith, would you like to kick off?
No, I'm happy to go straight into questions, Chair. That's fine.
we have formed a task and finishing group, which is still ongoing and doing a lot of work. I've learned a lot along the line, and it's not as easy as everybody thinks. Keith, could you just, before we kick off, could you just explain whose responsibility it is for cleaning the rivers, as you've done in task and finishing group before, please, and how the licenses work as well? Maybe that will put a lot of questions to bed before they kick off. Thank you.
Of course, no problem. So there is a general responsibility of landowners to responsible for a stretch of river that passes through their land. That's called the riparian owner responsibility. But there is also in terms of the flood risk regulations and regulations around the Flood and Water Management Act, there is a risk management authorities, lead local flood authorities, of which Denbighshire are one, ourselves are others, have a responsibility, or that we have permissive powers to use our permissive powers on to carry out works or actions on watercourses. For Denbighshire County Council, this is mainly sits with what's termed ordinary watercourses, which generally tends to be smaller watercourses, and Natural Resources Wales. Our permissive powers reside with what's termed main rivers. These generally are the larger watercourses, although it does depend. It's all reliant on what's called the main. There's a sort of a schedule, a mapped designation that's available on the intranet that outlines which watercourse is responsible, or who is responsible in terms of where their permissive powers are for each of those watercourses. So Natural Resources Wales can choose to use their permissive powers to carry out works or activities within those watercourses, and we'll carry out those, we'll assess that and carry out those works based on flood risk. And in terms of the national strategy and risk prioritisation, it's based on flood risk to people and property. If a landowner, riparian landowner, wishes to carry out works themselves, which they are entirely welcome to do, and they are legally allowed to do, they need to ensure that what they're doing is carried out in accordance without causing any damage to the environment, but also ensure that then the actions that they carry out don't cause any detriment or make the situation worse for others. In terms of they might decide they're going to protect. They might decide they want to protect their own property by carrying out some activity which actually causes problems to a neighbouring landowner or another landowner upstream or downstream of their land. So the framework for dealing with that is called a flood risk activity permit, and the flood risk activity permit allows an assessment to be made on what the individual wishes to do, what time of year they want to do it, what permissions they need to have in place, how they want to carry out that activity, mainly to ensure that that they, under the legislation, are carrying out, they're not causing detriment, but also they're not causing detriment to individuals, but also the environment. And that flood risk activity permit, or those permits are for non-main river or ordinary watercourses will be applied for through the local authority, and for main river it would be through Natural Resources Wales.
Thank you, Keith. That's very helpful. Wayne, do you want to add before we kick off as well, or are you good to go?
I'm good to go, Chair. Yeah, I think Keith explained the difference, if you like, between the council's role and NRW's role in relation to main rivers and ordinary watercourses. So no, good to go.
Thank you, Wayne, and thank you, Keith, as well. Mervyn Parry, Councillor Mervyn Parry, please.
Yeah, thank you. It's just for clarification on it. Although I've read this before in the flood task and finish. The wording on page 20 and 21 of this document mentions Llandyrnog in the...
We're losing you for some reason. I don't know why.
Can you hear me now? Better?
Yes.
Yeah. I'll just put my camera off. The on page 20 and 21 of the report, it mentions the locations that were flooded and impacted by the flooding. And it mentions Llandyrnog, but doesn't mention anything about Llanonis, although on page 21, it does mention in the work about Llanonis. It doesn't mention the properties in the Llanonis area. So I don't want the Llanonis area to be missed, because that was probably worse than Llandyrnog in the properties and the flooding that I had there. And in the summary on 36, I think it is, it's pretty much the same. So I'd like you to strengthen that one up a little bit by adding Llanonis into it in case all this work is done and Llanonis is missed out, please.
Okay, thank you, Mervyn. I'm sure that's been noted. Thank you. I haven't got any more speakers from within the committee. Any more committee members like to ask questions before I go outside the group? I've got a large amount of members outside the group. So, no, Graham, do you want to come in now or like after? After, okay. So we'll start off with Christine Marston, please.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to speak. Section 19 report into the flooding as a result of Storm Christoph in January 2021. What baffles me with this report is the loss of Llanach Bridge is not mentioned. I appreciate no residential properties were flooded due to the bridge collapse, but its loss has been devastating to my community. It's an important infrastructure and has had catastrophic impact on not only families, residents...
We're struggling to hear, sorry.
Oh, sorry. If I turn my video off. So frustrating, technology, when it doesn't work. It's the loss of a bridge and Llanach Bridge. Shall I continue?
Yes, please.
It's the loss of Llanach Bridge, and why is it not mentioned in this report? We will be going as an authority to Welsh Government to ask for funding when all the consultations have gone on. And it's not even mentioned in our Section 19 report into this storm. Can officers please comment? Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take another two speakers and then we'll go to answers, if that's okay. Thank you. Cynghorydd Emrys Wyn yn mynd I siarad nesa. Diolch.
Diolch, Cadeirydd. Mae gen I 3 cwestiwn mewn gwirionedd. Os ga I gyfeirio at yn weddol sydyn, da ni'n gwybod yn Rhuthun, ac am Rhuthun fyddai'n siarad yn unig wrth gwrs naturiol. Da ni'n gwybod am Rhuthun bod y dŵr wedi casglu ar lawr ar wyl o stryd Clwyd a stryd Felnin yn Ionawr 2021. Ac mae yna sgwrs ar y stryd a mae yna gyfeiriad at yn yr adroddiad hefyd bod yna elfen o broblem gyda'r dreiniad o'r rhan yna a ffordd I mewn yn ôl I afon Clwyd sydd wedi gallu cario'r dŵr oddi yno. Ga I ofyn 3 cwestiwn digon syml dwi'n meddwl. Pa mor aml mae'r dreiniau a'r gyllis yn cael, a hefyd yr outlets yr lle sy'n gwacau i'r afon. Pa mor aml mae'r rheini yn cael i'w harchwyddio ac oes na waith yn dilyn hynny o ran gwella neu trwsio os di'r arolygon yn dangos hynny. Yr ail gwestiwn di, gyda wrth edrych yn ôl wan, oni ddyle bod y dreiniau hyn a'r gyllis yma yn cael i'w harchwilio'n mwy aml na hyn sy'n digwydd ar hyn o bryd. Ac yn ola, y trydydd cwestiwn ydy, da ni bod yn disgwyl rwan ers ddechrau ha a fi gwaith trwsio a cynnal a gwella y bynd yng Nghaeddol I gychwyn. Da ni wedi cael 2 false started yn hyn, dwi'n meddwl. A mae'n hen bryd I ni fod yn gyrru ymlaen gyda'r gwaith hwnnw. Gael goffa bawb bod yr ardal yma wedi gweld llif yn y flwyddyn 2000 a 2021 ac o fewn trwch blewyn I gael yr un beth yn 2012 hefyd. Felly mae'n ardal sydd angen sylw dybryd yn y dre. Diolch yn fawr.
Diolch Emrys. Siaradwr nesaf di Cynghorydd Bobby Feely.
Thank you, Hugh. And can I just say at the outset, Hugh, absolutely nobody thinks that this is an easy matter, and many thanks to the task and finish group with the officers who've been trying to desperately to find good solutions for these problems. We all know that climate change causing river and sea levels to rise on a permanent basis. Hence, these flooding incidences are becoming more and more common. So I do indeed appreciate the difficulties of all the relevant agencies. I wonder if any consideration at all has been given to slowing the water. Could I just say that I'm here on the Ruthin section as Ruthin County Councillor, so I won't be asking questions on anything other than Ruthin, if that's okay. I wonder if there's been any consideration given to slow the water before it reaches Ruthin. I wonder if measures could be taken further upstream to slow the ingress of the water off the hills and the fields. River Clwyd has been flowing for a number of miles before it reaches CYTUNWYD. I wonder if any work has been done with the relevant landowners to see if any mitigating measures could be put in place along that journey somewhere. Further, has there been any thought given to extending the bund both sides of the river further up towards the old bridge where the Oxbow Lake has started to form, which would allow water to dissipate maybe towards the farmer's field way before reaching any housing in Mill Street? Referring to the queries made by Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which I have obviously seen, but haven't been read out yet. But as a result of seeing that note, I wonder, have DCC put a plan into operation to ensure gullies and the valve are regularly inspected and maintained? And also, is there adequate flood doors in both the houses and flood doors, or gates maybe you call them, with the houses and of course the jail, which was severely affected? And this is my final point, Mr. Chair, thank you for letting me speak. As portfolio holder for Heritage and as a consequence the jail, I feel duty bound to say that we have been disappointed that the repairs to the jail basement area, and it is our premier visitor attraction, they have been given very little attention and are still ongoing since January 21. Because this damage was not tackled in a timely manner, the team who run the jail are unlikely to get possession back until April or May next year, after which there will be at least a couple of months' work on the jail, getting it back up to scratch. So it will probably be July 2022 before we get our main heritage attraction up and running. So I thought, you wouldn't mind if I just brought that in, because I think that could be doing with an answer as well. I hope I haven't asked too much for you all.
Thank you, Bobby. So we'll go to answer some of the questions. Keith, do you want to answer Chris's, Tony Ward on MRIS, and I think Bobby's, it's Wayne Hope, if I'm wrong, but a lot of this has been asked in the task and finishing group, so I'm quite confident I've got the right people. So fire away. Keith, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, I think in terms of Atlantic Ridge, I'm not certainly from a flood investigation report, from NRW's flood investigation report, we were looking at properties, so I'd leave that one probably for Wayne to pick up. The repair for CYTUNWYD, yeah, I think we, as Emrys kindly mentioned, we had a couple of false starts. They are actually arriving on site to begin the works next Monday, the 25th. So I had an update yesterday from the team carrying out the work. So that's something that repair is taking place from Monday onwards. Extending the bund upstream and flood doors on properties. So after since the flooding in since Storm Christoph, we have carried out a survey of all the defences that we've got currently in Ruthin. We have updated the flood model that we've got for Ruthin. That fed into the permissions that we required on what we could and couldn't do, the extent of the work and repairs that we could and couldn't do at Cyfol, because as I mentioned before, we have to be careful that we have to get permissions as well in terms of that flood risk activity permit, and we have to ensure that any works that we do are not going to cause detriment elsewhere. So that was part of the reason why things had been delayed in delivering that on the ground. That model has been completed, and that is now passing on to our initial assessment phase. And that initial assessment phase will look at future options, which, as Councillor Feely mentioned around, we'll look at things like what happens if you extend that bund upstream. What is the impact of that? What other options have we got in terms of reducing the risk? And we'd have to look at holistically as the whole of Ruthin, because understandably, if we do something in one location, it's bound to have an impact on moving the water somewhere else. So we have to make sure that what we're doing isn't going to cause that detriment elsewhere.
Bobby, do you want to come back on that? I see your hand up. Do you want to come back on it now? You're on mute, sorry, Bobby. Bobby, you're on mute, sorry.
Beg your pardon. Sorry, Chair. I just thought I would say to Keith, is it Evans or Ivans? I'm not sure. That the question I asked was, had contact been made with any relevant landowners in order to try and mitigate further away? And he didn't answer that. And the one about the bund that's been done now, I didn't ask a question on because I know about that, because I met somebody on site and I know.
Can I just stop you there? I think Wayne Hope will answer some of those questions as well. So
all right then. Okay, I'll leave it till the end then.
Yeah, okay.
I'll leave it till the end.
Thank you, Keith. Wayne, do you want to add on about the flooding work you're doing up the valley, up from Ruthin upwards? Just
yeah, of course, Chair. So the council's had some money from Welsh Government to look at natural flood management approaches, which is all about keeping water up in the upper catchments. And we're working in conjunction with Natural Resources Wales and Welsh Water. That's quite an exciting project, and it will develop over the coming years, I think. One thing I would caution though, and I learned this from the flooding in St Asaph in 2012, is that if the catchment is saturated, then all of these little measures that you put in place to store water up in the catchments can have very little effect. So for the big flood events, such as what happened in 2020 in St Asaph and this year in Ruthin, these measures they have some impact, but they don't prevent flooding, and it's really important that we still carry out work such as what NRW are proposing in Ruthin, which I would describe as a traditional flood risk management approach.
On to the drains, to Tony Ward. And
yeah, thanks, Chair. There's a couple of things I probably I can comment on. The first one, if I can, just first of all about Llanwick Bridge. Just to answer that question, Keith alluded to the answer really in that this report is about flooding to property, and obviously that wasn't the case in relation to the bridge. That isn't to say, however, that isn't a really important event that needs to be addressed, and it is, and it does, but it's just not being addressed via this report because that's not the purpose of it. Just to let you know, the public engagement that we're currently undertaking to gather formally the views of the community in relation to the Lost Bridge, that closes on Monday, and I also have a feedback session with consultants who are looking at feasibility work around potentially replacing the bridge. That feedback session is happening tomorrow. A week on Monday, I'm then taking a report to Cabinet briefing to summarise the main points from both the public engagement work and also that feasibility feedback session. And I have then asked to be on the agenda for the next MAG meeting, LW MAG meeting, to provide feedback to the LW MAG on the issue. Prior to that, I will be inviting Councillor Marsden and also Merrick to a meeting to update them before that MAG meeting, so that they're fully aware of what we plan to present to the MAG before we do so. So that's just an update on Llanelli Bridge. In terms of the highways drainage issues, there's quite a few questions in relation to that. How often are gullies, etc., inspected? We have a program across the county where all the highways, gullies are visited to be cleaned at least once a year. We do have hot spots where that is required more often. What we've actually undertaken at the moment, Tim Towers in my service, is undertaking a review of drainage generally, a wholesale highways drainage review. That's on the back of the fact that we obviously having more and more issues these days as we get heavier rainfall and lots of big rainfall events. So we are undertaking a review of drainage generally. That kind of balance between scheduled work and reactive work, because we obviously do react when our inspectors spot issues with blocked gullies, but also we get reports from members and the public. So there is an element of responsive work where we go and address issues as well. That balance, it will be looked at as part of that review. But one of the fundamental issues we have is with all of our really historic highways drainage systems, we don't necessarily have detailed plans of them. They're all very old. There's a lot of them. So what we're having to do at the moment is when we are going around the county to address drainage issues, we are having to map and those and log them and to detail with the information about how they work and how they're all connected together, so that we're able to build up this picture as time goes on of the drainage systems across the county. In respect of a lot of the issues that are highlighted in this report, you'll note in the report there are a number of mentions in there about the need to undertake a review of the highways drainage in this area. So what we're doing is packaging those things up into packages of work for contractors to go and undertake those reviews and to address issues that they encounter whilst doing that work. We've done some already, but what we're doing is obviously prioritizing those areas where we have had issues in the past, obviously including all of the areas that are highlighted within this report. But the one thing I would say in relation to highways drainage is that that was not the reason for the flooding that occurred in January in Ruthin. And so that the flooding of those properties didn't occur because there was a blocked gully. The issues are much more fundamental than that. The volume of water that occurred. So that wasn't the reason. That doesn't mean that we don't need to maintain our gullies and review all of our drainage systems. We do, and that's what we that's what we are doing, and what we've always done. But I did just want to respond to say that in relation to Ruthin, because I think there is perhaps a perception that may have been the reason for flooding in Ruthin in January.
Thank you, Tony. There was one question, I think somebody can answer on the slew gates, they're called. Emrys, I think, picked it up. Emrys, did you ddod I fewn cyn i mynd i fewn?
Ie, diolch yn fawr. Na i ymateb yn sydyn i beth dwi'n newydd glywed rwan. Yeah, I understand that the reason for the flooding was not the drainage, but as soon as the water was gathering at that low level point above River Clwyd, it's had nowhere to go, apparently. This is what we noticed on the evening. I'm not an expert. The experts have been visiting the place. I can't actually say what the exact reason why the water did not escape from that area. But I know that if it hasn't got anywhere to go, it's going to build up there. That's just basic physics for me. So I don't question what you just said, Tony, but I do wonder, was there an issue with drainage on that evening, not allowing the water to run its natural course back into the river and down the Vale? Yes, and the sluice or the valves, I believe there is one beneath, just above the river level, on by the jail there in Ruthin, and that apparently failed from what I've seen in the report and also what I've been told on the street as well.
I could probably best to ask Wayne or Keith to comment on that, if that's okay. And Wayne, Keith, I'm not quite sure who's best placed.
Yeah, I'll come in if that's okay, Tony and Chair. So I saw some video footage of the river water coming over the defences at Caeddol, and there's no way that any highway drainage system would be able to deal with that. And I should say as well that there's no evidence of any problems with the highway drainage system in that area, bearing in mind that the flood happened in January, so over the preceding months of that winter, there were no reported problems. It was just the sheer volume of water, which was several cubic meters of flood water coming over those defences every second, and the place was inevitably inundated. That the water did eventually drain away, but it was a huge volume of water that the system was never designed for, because it's designed to deal with rainwater falling in the immediate locality.
Thank you, Wayne. Emrys, does that answer your question? I know it's not the answer you want, but does that answer your question?
No, I nothing reported prior to the flooding. I have to accept that if nothing was reported, nothing had been reported. But these things tend to manifest themselves after the events very often as well, and there will be, people do talk, they do speak, and they do mention that they've noticed this, that, or the other previous weeks and things. And yes, drains and gullies are reported to us frequently, and anything we do receive as members, we would pass on. It's a case in this point here is that there was apparently a drain which wasn't allowing the water to escape into the river. I can't, once again, I'm not the expert. I just have to hear what people say.
Diolch, Emrys.
Thank you.
I think as repeating what Wayne's saying, Wayne, it's no evidence of that. So we'll. Yeah,
I'm sorry. I missed most of his response. I'm just in the middle because it's breaking up. I think the connection problem is my end, but I can catch up with it later. Diolch yn fawr.
Yeah, thank you. Swiftly moving on to Peter Scott and then Glenn Swingler. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry I didn't come at the start. My iPad went and I couldn't get my notes. Yes, listening to the conversations, and you did quite right. I think St Asaph was basically the heaviness of the rain. It wouldn't go away. We do ask for drains to be cleared and gullies, and I think Tony and Wayne between them did a lot of the requests that we asked. So we weren't really affected by Christoph. Certainly from the river and to the houses and such, the defences held. The culvert worked properly this time, so that was good. That was all. And Clissyfell, where we had the problems, I think Denbighshire have sorted out now. So I'm quite happy. I am keen on this natural flood management, and Keith knows that, and sent me an email yesterday. We have a young lady who wants a farm who wants it to do, but the money's run out. But I shall keep going at him. I think this natural flood management will work in the end for everybody, not just St Asaph. That's all, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. No question there, but thank you for your contribution on the task and finishing group as well. We are lacking one member from the PRESTATYN area. No, we're not, sorry. Okay. Right, swiftly moving on to Glenn Swingle, please.
Yeah, good morning, thank you. Page 81, on my pack at least, addendum to Brookhouse flood investigation report. I noticed that was written on the 5th of March of this year. On page 87, at the bottom, conclusions and next steps, it says, the flood investigation report carried out following flooding on 9th of February made several proposals. To date, no progress has been made in considering / actioning these. Is that still the case? My next question is far more general. It's, you know, we're getting all, yeah, this change in our weather and all the rain that comes down and the change in the environment in general. What is the answer to this? Are we just constantly just going to have to be fighting what the weather is throwing at us, or is there a longer term projects in mind? Thank you.
Maybe
I think that's probably one from me, Chair. So with the Brookhouse one, we have looked at the viability of implementing river level monitoring on the Ystrad. At the moment, we're not able to progress that just purely because of the network as it is. We don't have sufficient resource. The resource we've got is only enough to manage the network as it stands. So, but we're looking at it is in the programme, and hopefully, if we can resolve the issues around capacity issues and resourcing issues. And we're looking at a larger network review within NRW of our hydrometric network. Once that's concluded, we may see some sites being decommissioned as no longer needed, which will allow then us to reconsider other sites where we can bring those online and look at options there. So at the moment, we are not able to progress it, but we have looked at it. In terms of the hydraulic modelling, that's still in the programme, and it is in the programme to be done. It's just in terms of prioritisation, it's further down the programme. So that's hopefully that's all I can probably say on that at the moment. In terms of, I suppose, I don't think as most people, I think within this sort of this area of work, fighting nature is just a bit fruitless. I think we can't fight against it. We've got to try and work with it. There will inevitably, as Wayne mentioned, there's inevitably we've got situations and locations that historically they are where they are. So we have to manage as best we can the risk that those communities are sort of experiencing. But certainly, we've also got to look at things like the natural flood risk management options. We've got to look at other options to reconnect floodplains. We've got to look at ensuring that actually the planning of future development or future development activities don't increase that risk or don't put more people or communities at risk in future. So that's really where the future needs to be. But in terms of, I agree, you can't fight against it. We've got to do as best we can. We've got to work with what we've got and use the technology and the solutions that are available to us to manage the risk as best we can. But I think also those people who are communities that are at risk, it's important for us to make sure that they're aware of that risk and aware of things that they could do themselves to help themselves as well. I don't know if Wayne wants to add anything to that.
Not really, Keith. I think it's things have gotten worse over probably quite a few decades. Increase in population, more houses being built on floodplains because it's easier to build there over the years. And hindsight's a wonderful thing. Looking back now, we would say, well, why did you build there? But yeah, all we can do is do the best with what we've got. Looking at holding water back in the catchment, as you said, Keith, reconnecting floodplains, and trying to keep water where it's safe and doesn't cause any damage. It's just going to be a huge task going forward. But I mentioned before that we work as the main agencies involved with flood risk management ourselves, Natural Resources Wales and Welsh Water. We work very closely together. and that's a great benefit I think in Denbighshire.
Thank you both. Moving on now to the question from the two members of public. Graham Timms is going to read it out on behalf of them. Thank you, Graham.
Welcome, Mr. Cadeirydd. We've got three questions from Mr. and Mrs. Smith. So starting with the first one, item 5.1, that's in the report, identifies that one of the measures in the corporate plan is to reduce the number of properties at risk of flooding in Denbighshire, and the report highlights opportunities to help achieve this. The measures recommended are all identified as being matters for Natural Resources Wales to address. Although the NRW flood investigation report for Ruthin does raise some other issues that are the responsibility of DCC. That's the first question. Shall I go through the three questions, Chair? So the second one, which I think has probably been dealt with already, the second point touched on by Cynghorydd Emrys Wyn. In section 4.1, it states that anecdotal evidence by residents suggested that some of the roadside gullies were blocked and were unable to drain ponding water efficiently. While they're not designed to cope with extreme events, nearby properties rely on them taking surface water away swiftly to keep potential flooding to a minimum. Several requests were made to DCC via the website, and the gullies were cleared after the event. And the third point is, it was also noted by residents before the flooding event that a non-return valve on the drain outlet adjacent to the jail wall and below the steel plate flood wall, and there's a picture of that on page 50 of the agenda pack, figure 9, was unable to operate freely because it was choked with soil and vegetation. It seems that during the flood, a build-up of pressure from water, unable to escape, blew the manhole cover, suggesting a considerable amount of water may have been able to return to the river by this route had the valve operated effectively. Interestingly, the outlet had been cleared by the next day. And so they're the three questions from Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Diolch yn fawr.
Chair, shall I begin?
Please.
If you don't mind. Okay, just yeah, on the first point, which is kind of a point really, isn't it? A statement rather than a question, I think. I mean, it's correct. I mean, there are recommendations within the report today that are also for Denbighshire Council. It's not all of the recommendations are about Natural Resources Wales. Some of them are NRW working together with DCC, and some of them are very clearly for Denbighshire as well. So that, yeah, that is true. So a factually correct statement, and those recommendations that are within the realms of DCC, we'll be working through those, and we are working through those, and we'll ensure that they are followed up on. So there's don't have an issue with that. I think I have already covered the second point, and I'm also I probably wouldn't like to say any more necessarily in relation to the specific point raised by Mr. and Mrs. Smith, because I have also already responded as part of a formal complaint regarding this from Mr. and Mrs. Smith. I responded at stage 2 of our complaints process, and and anything more that I kind of say in relation to that, it could potentially prejudice any approach they may wish to make to the Ombudsman if they're not happy with the stage 2 response. But I think I've covered the general point today. Okay. The third one, I'm not sure again whether Wayne and or Keith are probably best placed to talk about the third one. Wayne, is there anything you want to say on this?
I think other than to say that the purpose of the non-return valve is in that location is to prevent the river fluid coming back up into the surface water drainage system causing flooding. So in that respect, it did its job. The photograph that's referred to, it isn't actually that non-return valve. That's a plate that runs alongside the river to locally raise the height of the defences. Just to clarify that point, but no, nothing to add. Really,
Thank
Tony,
you.
thank you.
Keith, are you okay?
I'm fine. I don't think I've got anything further to add. Thanks.
Thank you. And can I just thank Mr. and Mrs. Smith for asking the question. It's good to have questions off the members of the public in scrutiny, and great. So can I move on, if there's no other speakers, pull it to an end, and ask Graham Timms to do the recommendations, please.
Okay, the recommendation on 3.1 of the report is that the Council seeks assurance from Natural Resources Wales that the recommendations identified in Natural Resources Wales flood investigation report will be carried out.
Could I have a proposer and a seconder, please? Peter Scott.
Yeah, I'll second it.
And Graham, I think Graham Timms over here. Yeah, great. Can I thank all the services that attended that report, and swiftly moving on to agenda item 6. I think we've got the. Oh, sorry. Is everybody in agreement with that? Sorry. Yeah, nobody.
Yep.
Sorry, I was getting a bit excited by time then. Number 6, I think we've got the same team again. So can I ask Brian to introduce it and kick it off, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this report is a long-awaited report surrounding the RHYL cut and PRESTATYN gutter, which drains a large section of area in my part of the world. The report there is self-explanatory. There was a report sent out to members outside of this report. So I'd like to invite Keith Ivans from Natural Resources Wales to run through their report on the RHYL cut and PRESTATYN gutter.
Thanks very much for that. I'm actually expecting Danny Bryce Smith to join us to actually provide the detail. I don't know whether he's in the waiting room at all.
No, he's not, Keith, sorry.
Okay. He was due to join us.
Keith, do you want to, we'll adjourn for 5 minutes. Do you want to give him a ring in terms of get on
yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
So just a 5-minute adjournment. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Not a problem. So this report is the flood risk management responsibility in relation to the RHYL cut and PRESTATYN gutter. And I'd like to hand over immediately to the representatives from Natural Resources Wales, who will introduce themselves and who will give us a presentation of their report. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Okay. Thanks very much, Chair. So thanks very much for allowing us to present this piece of work that's been going. We've been working closely with Denbighshire County Council and Dŵr Cymru Welsh Water. This work was initiated following flooding in RHYL, and as part of that work, as part of the flood investigation work, it was quickly identified that actually, in terms of the flood sources of flooding, there were multiple sources of flooding in this area, and it was a very complex drainage network that was fully integrated with both the RHYL cut and PRESTATYN gutter. So the work has been broken down into a number of phases, and we've been delivering these phases in partnership with Denbighshire County Council and Welsh Water over a number of years. The first phase was aimed to use all the information that we had from drainage networks and so on from partners to understand the flood risk in these 2 watercourses. Phase 2 was concentrating on understanding the next sort of the management of those watercourses. And this third phase is looking at the maintenance around an adaptive maintenance process that can be used going forward around different sections, subsections of each of those watercourses. So whereas phase 2 was looking at the watercourses in their sort of entirety, phase 3 is actually breaking down each of these watercourses into subsections, because we were sort of clear that there was benefits in some locations of some pieces of work being carried out more frequently or less frequently, or different types of work being carried out in different sections, and that impacted flood risk and water management in each of these sections. I think it's useful to note that obviously both of these, as members will be aware, are both very heavily modified watercourses, and as such, you know, they are historically very difficult to manage, and very urban drainage network that's sort of interlinked with both of these watercourses. What I'd like to do is just hand over to Daniel Bryce-Smith, who's been working on the phase 3 work for us, who will hopefully give you a little bit more detail around the phase 3 work.
Thank you, Keith. Welcome, Danny.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, thanks for that, Keith. So I'm just going to start sharing my screens. Going to just prepared a short presentation, just a bit of an overview. Hopefully everyone can see the presentation there. So just like I say, a brief overview in terms of the phase 3 work and the maintenance communications that we're going to be issuing shortly. Okay, sorry. Okay, sorry. Okay, just get the hang of this. Okay, just a little bit of background information just to build on what Keith was saying there, really. So it's been 3 phases: the flood risk modelling study, catchment management report, and then, as he says, phase 3, getting into the real detail of how each part of the watercourses are managed. So we've effectively delivered the first 3 phases of the project now, and just finalising some aspects of the phase 3 before publishing. So here's a list. I won't read through the whole list of things that we've worked through as part of the first 3 phases, but some extensive modelling, a lot of different model runs to try and understand the existing situation and where the key areas are for maintenance and certain other areas that are maybe less critical. I should also point out that maintaining some areas of the watercourse can actually increase flood risk in other areas. So, so as phase 2, we looked at the watercourses in their entirety, as Keith was saying, but that's much too simplified, because maintaining the whole watercourse in the same standard can actually increase flood risk in other areas. So you're effectively passing on more water into maybe more urban areas, which can be a bigger problem than holding it back in some more rural areas. So the approach to phase 3, so very much an evidence-based approach using quite detailed hydraulic modelling. So we've looked at channel vegetation, basically the roughness of the watercourse, looked at different bed levels along each watercourse, and some blockages at key locations as well. So this has really improved our understanding and has enabled us to really look at a detailed maintenance plan. So we've split down each watercourse into the reaches, and you can see here, so we've got the R's are RHEOL cut starting, so we've got R1 starting at the confluence with PRESTATYN gutter, following through rural area, well, semi-rural area, and then into the urban reaches down to R9, which is the confluence with the Clwyd estuary. You have to excuse, there are some spelling errors on this plan which are being updated. This is an older version, sorry. And then the P reaches are PRESTATYN gutter, so starting in the urban area with various ditches inflow through Pwyllgor and down through all the way to Gronant pumping station at the downstream end. Just to note here, we've got a little peculiarity is that reach R3 is a leg that's pumping, that's real pumping station. So we're now aiming to try and communicate the findings of the study. We're going to publish things on the NRW website, and I'm just going to quickly run through the different parts of the website without going into the detail at this time of the different reaches, so that comments on that can follow at a later date. But what we've got is going to have sort of an overview, maintenance responsibilities, where to go for reporting incidents and for further flood risk information, how we approach riverbed level management. I'm sure that's of interest to a lot of people. And then there's going to be a summary sheet for each reach detailing the riverbed level management, vegetation clearance, and so on, which I'll come to. So these are just extracts from the document, which will be turned into a website and obviously translated as well. So this is just an introduction with links to all the different reaches, and then people can zoom in and see the reach of relevance or interest to them. So I won't get into the detail of the maintenance responsibilities, but NRW have certain responsibilities, local authorities and other parties have various other responsibilities, and mainly links to further information in terms of how people can report incidents and find further information. So we've produced a long section for each reach of the watercourses. Here's an example extract below, which we've tried to simplify it. But appreciate that we've still got a lot of information to communicate on these sections, so may not be immediately obvious to people, but we've plotted the right bank and the left bank, so that's looking downstream. You either have the right bank or the left bank. Some key features such as access bridges or outfall structures. Then we've got the soft bed level, so silt and sand. And then in places below that, there's a hard bed level. Sometimes there is no soft bed. Then we've plotted a typical water level. And then we've also determined a maximum bed level that doesn't lead to excess flood risk. So here's just an example sheet that will be provided for each reach. Now, I've actually deleted the information out of here intentionally just to avoid detailed questions, because that wasn't the point of today's presentation. And this is just one of the reaches, R1 at the top end of RHYL cut. But we can see here we're going to give a summary of the current flood risk information, flood risk, the condition of the river, and then what the impacts of the maintenance are. So as I was saying earlier, often, improved maintenance does reduce flood risk, would be the obvious thought. But in certain places, increased maintenance in one reach actually can increase flood risk in another reach. So it is quite a complicated picture. And then we've set out the different maintenance activities within that reach, and obviously that varies depending on the reach, but generally they include channel vegetation and weed clearance, tree and hedge management, any outfalls and flat valves, and then the key one, riverbed level management. So we can see here, looking at this example section, that the dark black line is the maximum bed level, and that's often, well, in this reach, that's actually set by the outfalls to ensure that the outfalls maintain free discharge. But the actual bed level in terms of the main river flood risk was not so critical in this area, and therefore we can see that the bed level could rise further before any maintenance is required, and that won't lead to flood risk. But in other areas, that's not the case. So that's it from me, really. That's just a little taster, an introduction to what's going to be coming, and we'll be looking for people's feedback in due course.
Thank you, Daniel. Paula, would you like to add to that?
Thank you. So my teams are the teams that go out and actually carry out this maintenance work. So yeah, we really welcome this piece of work, which will sort of enable us to concentrate where we need to and carry out the right work on the right stretches.
Great, thank you very much for that. Members?
Could I just come back in with one more thing, if no one else wants to add to that? It's just a little summary of what we're going to be doing in the future. So as part of this study, looking at maintenance, we've also looked at things that we could do, capital expenditure. So if funding is obtained, we could do various different things along both watercourses to reduce flood risk, and possibly reduce maintenance requirements through those measures as well. So you can see here an example plan of something we've produced, sort of highlighting the different features that could be done. And then just to say, we'll be looking to produce starting a business case for looking at a more major project in 2022.
Thank you for that presentation. I've got the first local member on the group, which is Cheryl Williams, please. Cheryl.
I'm glad. Oh, I'll put my picture on. Oops. I'm glad that you're doing a maintenance programme, but it should have been quite a while ago. There's been many issues along the cut, and some of the worst I know of are in the area where RHYL High School is. Some of the homes that are at the back of the cut are crumbling. So the backs of the gardens are crumbling, and it's historical. We've, you know, as our residents do complain in that area, and we've fought over the years, including the MS, former MS, Anne Jones, have all fought to help these people, and it's just not working. Since they introduced the school drainage as well, it's apparently got a lot worse. So there's that issue, and it's constantly full of rubbish the whole way along. And the wall has actually, I don't know if you know, that the wall has fallen in the Kingsley Avenue area where the cut is there. There's been some serious stuff going on, and nothing's been happening there. So I do hope that you will take a lot more serious look at all the rubbish and all the rodents that will come because of it. There's some beautiful wildlife that we've had in there that are clogging up the area, and they're not safe in there. We get ducks in there and things like that. It used to be that we had trout in there, from what I gathered from years ago. So, you know, I hope you continue to clear all the rubbish out more often as well. And you talk to those residents, or our residents in the area of, I think it's Regent Road, Coventry Drive and all that. They're all suffering really badly with losing their gardens. Resource Wales too, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Keith, do you want to come back on that, or shall I?
I think we'll just take any more questions. Chair, do you want to take a bank of them, or do you want?
Yeah, I was going to ask Keith to pick who he wants to come in with, really. So Keith, can you decide who you want to answer those questions? Thanks.
Sure. Yeah. So just initially, as mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, you know, NRW has permissive powers to carry out works and maintenance works along the watercourse. We don't. We're not the owner of the watercourse. We carry out our operations under permissive powers, and those permissive powers are to reduce flood risk flood risk to properties. So in terms of some of the issues that have been raised around debris in the watercourse, sort of amenity issues, rubbish, etc., unless they are causing an immediate flood risk, then we will deal with them at that period when we carry out maintenance. But in terms of erosion issues, we have been contacted quite regularly around bank erosion, etc. It does come back to riparian owner responsibilities. I know, I'm aware, obviously, there's been a petition that's been raised in Westminster by the MP, Dr. James Davis. I'm aware of that. And I think we have to, this piece of work that we're doing here allows us to target our maintenance and use our resources and the funding we've got on the maintenance in the best way possible. I don't know whether Paula's got anything she would like to just add around those specific locations at all, Paula?
I am aware of the concerns at those locations, but I think as you've explained, or as Keith's explained, as Keith's explained, our budget is for flood risk purposes, and we aren't the owners of RHYL Cut. So for that reason, it does fall to the riparian owners, and we do respond very much along those lines, that people need to take responsibility for their property.
Okay, thanks, Paula. Cheryl, does that answer your question? Are you happy with the response you've had?
At the end of asking those questions, I did say that it was Natural Resource Wales that the question was to, since they are the actual owners of the cut. I know that DCC have actually, or Denbighshire County Council, have actually tried to do the best that they can to get that clear. But with the ownership lying with Natural Resources, it's a problem, but they haven't answered why, whether they've
Cheryl, can I just for clarity, I'm a bit confused now. Keith, can you just put some clarity on that, please?
Yeah, NRW do not own the cut.
Oh.
We have permissive powers to carry out work on watercourses that are identified as main river, but in terms of land ownership, NRW do not own the cut.
That's not what I was told. Sorry, Denbighshire County Council told me it was Natural Resource Wales that owned it, and there was a little sign on the gate there on the one, it just comes off the back of Walford Avenue. But you haven't answered the question about the falling in wall, and you kind of skirted across, I think, the one where the back gardens are falling in. That's quite a serious issue.
If I can just come in, I think Keith has answered the questions quite clear. He's answered it to say it's the responsibility of the landowner. I don't know who the landowner is. Maybe, I don't know, is this the place to discuss who the landowner is and who owns the land? But I think Natural Resources Wales have clearly answered your question. There's one thing I've learned from the Task and Finishing group is that, you know, I wasn't aware it was the landowner's responsibility to do a lot of this maintenance and get permission to do it. I think everybody blames the Natural Resources Wales, so I have to defend them on this case. But I think you need to get some clarity on who owns the gutter. And I don't know, Gary Williams, is this the place we should be doing this or not?
I think, to be fair, if there's some doubt as to who owns it, I think it would be wrong if we started bandying about the names of people we thought owned it, because we're effectively talking about individuals who aren't able to respond themselves. What I will ask is I'll ask legal services to carry out some inquiries as to the ownership. If Councillor Williams can email me with details of the bit that she's talking about, because clearly it may cross through different ownerships, then I'll ask legal services to investigate that.
Yeah, I don't know. Apologise if I'm wrong. I was just given that information by Denbighshire County Council some time ago. So
thank you, Cheryl. So you'll email Gary, yeah? Thank you. Yeah. Next speaker is Hugh Irving. Thank you, Hugh.
Good morning, everybody. Borada. I'll confine my remarks to being reasonably general and only referring to where Prestatyn gutter crosses my ward, which is a central ward of Prestatyn. So basically it comes across the Morvers before it goes into north or east wards and moves on towards Gront. I was down there recently with Countryside Services on the Morvers, and we walked along a stretch of the gutter. And this touches on the comments that have just been made, and it occurred to me that it looked awfully overgrown in places, and that didn't seem to be a good point to allow flood water to disappear down to towards the pumping stations. But now we're told that in fact the ownership might well lie with the landowners through which the gutter is passing. So I presume in the particular case I just noticed, and it's not a major issue compared with the sort of cases we've seen in RHYL, that it's passing through Prestatyn Morvers, which I presume belong to Denbighshire County Council. So we must have an area there where the gutter is actually ours, I presume. I don't know whether Gary's got a view about that. But it does seem to me that the key to all this is to keep those gutters clean, keep them maintained, get the supermarket trolleys and bicycles and whatever else sadly you see dumped on them here and there, to maintain a flow of water. So I don't know whether there was any comment about where the gutter, for instance, passes across what I assume is DCC land.
Can I bring you in again, Gary? Sorry.
Clearly, if it passes through our land, then we would have some responsibility. But again, I don't have details of which bit of land we own at my fingertips. And if again, if someone can, if Councillor Irving can send me details of the bit he's talking about, I'll get somebody to check ownership, and then we can speak to the responsible service for that bit of land.
Thank you. So is there a general observation then about the desirability of keeping all the gutters free of overgrown vegetation and rubbish and that sort of thing? Do the NRW representative have a comment about that?
Keith, do you want to share that out? Yeah.
Sorry.
All right, can Keith.
I was going to bring Paula in. Paula, do you want to pick this one up?
Yeah, I think we do have an annual maintenance programme, and that is on what's classified as main river wards courses. So we do go in and we do clear stretches of PRESTATYN, cut and RHEOL by both mechanical means and by hand clearance as well. Now that programme, it always starts towards the end of August, and that's to account for the end of bird nesting season. And we start in the lower reaches of both watercourses, and we work our way back up. So we're working on PRESTATYN at the moment, and we're doing those last reaches. So that the last reaches are from I don't know if you know Sandy Lane culvert and the railway culvert, and we follow it all the way back up. So it could be that you visited before we've actually got there to carry out that annual maintenance.
Fine, thank you.
Hugh, are you happy with that?
Yeah, I'll take another walk along the banks there and see what I find.
Great, thank you. And then you,
I think, Chair, it's just worth reiterating that the maintenance programme is there for flood risk purposes. That's the purpose of it. So, and that's been done through using our permissive powers.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Paula. And then Hugh, you emailed Gary with the details of the parcel of land you're on about, yeah?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, and Chair, what I'll do, I can identify what we own and what we don't own, and then clearly we just need to liaise with NRW and the relevant service over what responsibilities we had or not.
Thank you, Gary. The next question's from Councillor Mervyn Parry.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just thinking on this one, you know, we need everybody to work together across all the agencies on managing these projects. And I'm just wondering if NRW have to go onto a piece of land. I would imagine that they would know who the landowner are that they're working on, and would have to maybe get the permissions to go there. So possibly NRW could work with Denbighshire on maybe helping sharing the names of the landowners along that cut, because I'm sure if they've got to go and do a job, they'd know who they've got to approach as the landowner to get the permissions. I know they can do emergency works without maybe that, but it's probably something they would have, or they could find out to help Denbighshire. And it's all about trying to get everybody to work together to get the good end result out of this, I would have thought. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mervyn. Paula, or is that your department, or?
Yes. So when we work on third-party land, we do notify the landowners. However, when we work through urban areas, we have and especially through sort of PRESTATYN and RHYL, we have established sort of access points that we do go in and work along. So we don't actually notify, and because it's in that urban area and there are so many homeowners, we use sort of our those access points to go in and carry out that work, and then we'll use signage while the machines are in and banksmen to make sure that the safety of members of the public is accounted for, and we're managing that.
Yeah, can I come back on that?
Of course you can, Mervyn.
I think the idea of this is to help everybody work together. So possibly what I'm asking you is if somebody could look to see if there is a data of what land ownership you know that you've got. You might not know all of it, but you might know possibly a lot of them. That would just help the situation in identifying whose area that we're working in. If we can get NRW and Denbighshire to work together, we might be able to get sort of 80 or 90% of the landowners identified, and then maybe once you've got the identification of one, you can go and back and bang on the door of the guy next door and see, does he know anything about it? So it's just trying to get the information out of you to share with Denbighshire, so that we can get a better outcome out of what we're doing. So if you can respond to that one, please.
Yeah, that's fine. We're more than happy to work with Denbighshire to provide the information that we do have.
Thank you, Paula. Thank you, Mervyn. Just put your hand down, Mervyn. The next speaker is Tina. Thank you, Tina.
Thank you. Thank you. Quick question and an observation, really. On P2, the gutter there runs down through the meadows, which is Denbighshire County Council land as well. No, not the meadows estate, the meadows playing fields, right where the P2 is. And also, say for example, on that stretch, one side of it would be owned by Denbighshire, and on the other side of it, it would be owned by probably the farmers that used to farm Fleece Farm. So who would be responsible for that, please?
I think, again, repeating what Natural Resources Wales, Keith has said, it's the landowners. And I think Gary's going to write to the services within the council to find out what pieces of land. I think is a big piece of work, isn't it, Gary?
We wouldn't be. What we would do is clearly, if somebody's already got a database, that's great. But otherwise, I'll check with legal services. I don't know. We may have a lot of this information already, but we have a thing called the land terrier, which identifies land that we own. But somebody would need to go and interrogate that to ensure that they identified the bits of land that we own, and then we'd be able to check which service was responsible for them. But again, in terms of the things that Paul has been saying, we'd liaise with Natural Resources Wales as to whether there was anything for us to do over and above what they're already doing. It's just that the question I was asked was about who owns what bit of land. We're happy to find that out. We will know what we own, but we'll have to interrogate the records to check that. I don't have that at my fingertips.
Thank you, Gary. So glad you're here today to answer these questions. Hugh Irvine?
Well, yeah, yes, just it's a concern this raises with me, because we've started off an interesting debate, because the stretch that I was talking about, one half of it has our Coedy Morva on one bank, but there's the backs of the bungalows in Winchester Drive and Rochester Drive, etc., that are on the other. And then, of course, it's just the matter. I quite accept that a supermarket trolley irresponsibly dumped in the cut isn't going to be a flood risk. So NRW aren't going to send somebody down to do something about it. So that presumably I would have thought our countryside services could have done, because I walked past with Gary Davis from Countryside Services. So it wouldn't be a big deal to ask one of his team to go and haul the offending piece out. It's just really that we've got a task here. We now have like a major piece of work. I'm not sure whether the resources of the legal department.
We've lost you.
Sorry,
we lost you.
Sorry, I'm just concerned that we've given Gary Williams a major piece of work here, interrogating all these records.
If I can come in, Hugh, it's part of the task and finishing group, what we've been working on for the last few months, and we've got a lot of work. We've worked closely with Natural Resources Wales and Dŵr Cymru, Wayne's team, and it's all about scrutinising and finding out who's responsible for what. We are getting it, and I think this has opened a big can of worms today with local members who perhaps didn't realise who put all the blame on Natural Resources Wales. it's all finding out, and you know, Gary's going to go away and find this piece of work out. But I'm sure when the task and finishing group does come to a conclusion, that it'll be a lot clearer. I've learned so much over the last few months with who's what and what's doing what. So yeah, just be aware that we'll have to be a bit patient on this. But I'm sure when Graham does his recommendations, what we'll come up with some great plan of getting this information back maybe in a couple of months' time. But yeah, any more speakers? No more speakers. No. Graham, do you want to go to the recommendation?
Put me on the spot there, Chair, because I wasn't going to add any more recommendations, but I'm sure that there will be one or two, and one will be the report back on the ownership to make sure that that task has been done. Any others, Chair, that you?
No.
No. Okay. So the recommendations then are. The first one is a very general one, which says members of the committee provide comments and feedback regarding the contents of this report and the included appendices. And the second one, that the county investigates land ownership and reports back to
this committee, and whoever else.
Yeah.
Whoever else, Gary's going to come back to us and the Natural Resources Wales and local members as well, and then we can go from there. Yeah.
Okay. So unless any other members got something else they wanted to add, then they're the recommendations.
Yeah.
Can I have a proposer and a seconder?
I'll propose again, Chair, if you wish me to. Peter.
Yeah. Okay. And Graham seconding. Everybody in favour of the recommendations? Great. Everybody in favour. Nobody against? No. Right. That's concluded that. Can I thank you all for attending this morning's meeting from Natural Resources Wales and Denbighshire officers, and we'll swiftly go on to agenda item 7, which is the scrutiny work programme. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. I think part of what said under the last item will feed into the task and finish group's work as well, won't it, and be sort of outlined in their final report. Your forward work programme is attached on the report on page 95, and the work programme itself is on page 101. Now, your next meeting is on the 9th of December. There are listed there 4 quite substantial items. Now, since that was published, I have been told actually that it will be 3 items, but they will still also be quite substantial, because the items 3 and 4 on there, the Central RHEOL Flood Defence Scheme and the PRESTATYN Flood Defence Scheme, actually it will be one report but with 2 separate appendices on it. And you will also have a presentation, I think, given on them. So they will take quite a bit of time to go through in detail. You've also got the new waste and recycling model pilot project update and the Gypsy and Traveller accommodation assessment. You've got the process, but you will also have, as I understand it, the needs assessment to look at as well. So you may be an idea to have not 2 separate meetings, but perhaps to deal with the waste item and the 2 flood defence schemes initially, perhaps have a break around 12:30 and reconvene at 1 o'clock for the Gypsy and Traveller item, because that will be a pretty hefty one as well. I don't know what members think about that. But they have all got quite tight timescales and need to be discussed at the next meeting, so you really can't move them to another meeting.
As far as the chair and the vice chair, myself and Graham, we're happy to go with that. Are members happy to go with that?
Yeah.
It's important. It's going to be too heavy otherwise.
Yeah, let's get it
Yeah.
done.
Get it out. We meet again on the 15th of November for the GTAA, so we need to fetch it to you on the 9th of December. Definitely, please.
Wants to come in?
Yeah, just to say, Chair, that I think it's probably a good decision to have a separate section of the meeting with a defined starting time. So those people who want to join for the Gypsy and Traveller can come at 1 o'clock and they know that that's the time it's going to be dealt with, rather than sitting through a meeting. So
Are we confident 1 o'clock is going to be the right time? Because we've sat here now. It's 20 to 1 now, and
20 to 12.
20 to 12.
20 to 12, Chair.
No, sorry. Are we sorry? Are we happy?
I would have thought so. Yes, you'll start at 10, and then you'll have 2.5 hours to do 2 reports, which are quite hefty reports, especially the flood one. So I think it should be okay.
Okay. Yeah. Everybody happy then? Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Lovely.
Lovely. Diolch, Rhian.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, the chairs and vice chairs group last met on the 9th of September, and at that meeting they referred to you in total 5 items, 2 of which I've already referred to, which are the flood defence schemes. They also referred to you the highways maintenance policy for unclassified roads, and this stems from the additional capital allocated by council towards highways maintenance. So that's been scheduled for January next year. There's an item there on the mistreatment of dogs, which I think is concerns relating to puppy farms during the lockdown. So that's been scheduled for March. And there's another one scheduled for March as well, which is second homes and short-term holiday lets. So if you look in Appendix 1, all those items are currently in your work programme. The Scrutiny Chairs and Vice Chairs group are scheduled to meet again on the 25th of November. So if members do have any items they'd like to bring to scrutiny, please complete that proposal form in Appendix 2. And if you return it to me as soon as possible, I can make sure that the chairs consider your request then. And in Appendix 3 is the Cabinet's Forward Work Programme. And Appendix 4, which I've already referred to earlier, is the latest on your recommendations from the last meeting. And I think that's it.
Yeah, diolch. Rhian. Any members got anything they want to add to that?
Yeah, I just got a question, Chair, before you close.
Yeah, go on.
Rhian, could I just ask, did we ever get anything back about the work we were going to do in the community of RHEOL regarding the impact of the closure of Ysgol RHEOL, not on the children in the school, but the impact on the community of RHEOL that was promised by Jackie Wally during the term of the closure of the school? I haven't heard anything back from that, and I don't want to lose it. Thank you.
Yeah, it's still on your work programme. It's on page 107 as an information report. I have been in discussion with the Education Service, and they have got no record of this ever being promised, but they are looking into it. And they were having a meeting with, I think, one of the officers from the Business Improvements and Modernisation Service to see if this could be done as some kind of project and somebody could be allocated to do this work. I think they were having that meeting very, very recently. I haven't heard back from them as yet, so I can chase that up, no problem.
Okay. It was in a meeting that Howin was with us and Jackie Wally in Ysgol RHEOL at the time, with members of the parents of the children in RHEOL at the time, and some of the members of Llanynys Community Council and myself. So I'm not sure if any minutes were made of that meeting, but it was something that was brought. It was a question asked, and that was what was offered in that meeting by Jackie Wally herself on that one. So it's I'll leave that one there so they can come back, but that's just a bit of history of it.
Okay. Any others? No. Graham, do you want to say? No. Right, can I gender item? Diolch, Rhian. Gender item 8 is feedback from committee representatives. Any feedback from anybody?
We had obviously everyone is aware of the meeting with performance that we talked about MAVOD, and everyone's quite happy that it's going to reopen again. Just that, Chair. Thank you.
Diolch. That's it. Yeah. Okay. Can I just thank everybody for attending today's meeting, and thank all the staff here in County Hall and Graham for attending, and diolch yn fawr iawn. Thank you very much. End of meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you all later.
Have you seen?